Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot we have mass extinction. Paleontologists have been able to identify 5 different points in the history of the Earth where they believe that, for whatever reason, there have been mass extinctions where many, or sometimes even most, species were eliminated. Not only does this make me wonder what the Earth looked like in all of its different stages, but it also makes me question when the next one is going to be. As it turns out, however, we might currently be in the midst of one. In the past, the reasons for these mass extinctions have been things like asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, changes in the atmosphere, but this time it might be something different. According to biologists today, we are in the middle of the 6th mass extinction, and it started with mastodons being some of the earliest victims. From there, as the early humans moved from continent to continent, large animals that had been there and thriving for millions of years began to suddenly disappear. After the mastodons, it was the giant kangaroos in Australia, then the dwarf elephants in Europe, and the list just continues on. What is the common denominator in all of these? Well, humans, of course. Humans are driving this modern extinction with our habits of hunting, destroying habitats, introducing invasive species that throw delicate ecosystems off balance, and of course, spreading disease. This is of course of concern to scientists because who knows what our world will look like on the other end of things. I mean, as if we don't pollute the Earth enough, Elon Musk is now polluting our sky and our orbit, so who knows what's next and who knows when we'll stop. In our number 9 spot today we have dark energy. Astronomer Edwin Hubble, whom the Hubble telescope is named after, in the 1920s made the discovery that the universe is not static and it is in fact actually expanding. He was studying a supernova when he realized that the universe was not only expanding, but was expanding at a much higher rate now than it was a long time ago. This discovery was groundbreaking because prior to it, scientists believed that the gravity of matter would end up at least slowing the expansion of the universe, if not cause it to contract. Since this switched up everyone's way of thinking so much, there then began to be the debated topic of dark energy. This is the idea that there is an inexplicable force that is pulling the cosmos apart at speeds that are only increasing. Dark energy is said to make up 73% of the universe, but we still haven't been able to pin it down and directly detect it. Basically what I'm saying is we're pretty sure it's there, but we have no idea what it is, so that's a little terrifying. In our number 8 spot today we have our brains. Our brains aren't really ours, no matter how much we'd like to pretend they are. Perhaps that sounds a little more daunting than it actually is, but what I mean is that a lot of our behaviors, our emotions, and our beliefs are influenced by factors we don't even realize. It's like how everyone is happier when the weather is nice and sunny. Even if it's still cold, re Canada, just a cloud-free day changes a lot. Or like how when doing a taste test, you're more likely to prefer whatever the very first thing you tried is, even if the rest of the samples are exactly the same. Or like how a sneaky salesman simply gently nodding up and down to you while asking a question might make you more inclined to say yes to whatever deal they're offering you. You think you know why you're attracted to someone, but there's a chance it might actually just be their smell. Our memories aren't nearly as good as we think they are, and we often remember things incorrectly, even if we swear it's right. We misinterpret information all of the time based on our biases and our own preconceptions. We make generalizations that aren't right. What I'm trying to say is that what we think is reality is actually just our own reality that we've created in some ways. Perhaps this is just a biological mystery, but perhaps this means something larger. I mean, while this is a part of what makes life and makes interpersonal relationships interesting, there could be some more serious implications about this. Whether it's a judge or jury, a doctor's misdiagnosis, or about 100 other things that I could think of, this is something that could be and likely is quite problematic, especially since it's something we don't discuss very often. In our number 7 spot today we have age. How old can humans possibly age? It's an age-old question, literally. Over the decades, the average human lifespan has risen, and it's seen an exponential rise in the last few centuries. For example, the global life expectancy at birth average for the 19th century was between 28.5 years to 32 years old. That would mean in the 1800s, I'd have less than 10 years left. I'm basically a grandmother at this point. In our day and age, I have to listen to people way older than me tell me how little I know and how young and dumb I am. Here's where this leads to an interesting question. What is the oldest age a human can possibly reach? Is there a person who is alive right now who's going to be the first person to reach 150? Could people realistically live into their second century? And if so, what are the medical implications of this? Like, if someone lived into their 60s in the 1800s, that would have likely been a way older looking and feeling 60 than what 60 years old is to us now, right? The technology in medicine to make this happen and extend the human lifespan is probably already in development, but if it becomes a possibility, this leaves a lot of unsettling questions to be answered, and those are the things scientists are already looking ahead at. In our number 6 spot today, we have dark matter. Okay, if dark energy and all the mysteries it holds weren't enough, now we've got dark matter to talk about, and I'm sorry, but there's no more answers with this one. In the 1960s and the 1970s, scientists began to hypothesize that there might be more mass in the universe than we can see. After this, an astronomer at the Carnegie Institute of Washington named Vera Rubin was studying the speed of stars at different locations within galaxies. What she found was that there was essentially no difference in the velocity of the stars, whether they were closer to the center of the galaxy or further out. This was an interesting discovery because that defied the most basic laws of physics, right? Like, applying what we knew at that point, it would have made more sense for the stars on the outskirts of the galaxy to orbit more slowly than those at the center. In order to explain this, astronomers began discussing the phenomena of dark matter. It can't be seen, but it has a mass, which is how it's able to be detective because it exerts some sort of gravitational pull on regular matter. Dark matter makes up 23% of the universe, and if you remember from before, dark energy accounts for 73%, so that leaves us with a whopping 4% of matter that we understand better and know more about, which is matter like humans, planets, stars, that sort of thing. The other 96% of what the universe is made of is one of space's greatest mysteries, and that's a kind of terrifying thought, right? We have no idea what everything else is made up of. That's insane. In our number 5 spot today, we have Alzheimer's research. Many of us are familiar with Alzheimer's, but if you don't know, it's a neurodegenerative disease that causes dementia, and despite decades of research, there currently isn't a treatment for it that has been found to be highly effective. For a long time, there was a theory that suggested that Alzheimer's was actually caused by a pileup of protein called amyloids, which then creates a plaque in the brain, but because of the fact that treatments that are used to help clear the amyloids don't seem to work very well in terms of combating the disease, it is thought that now this might have been an incorrect theory. Researchers now think that their attention is better focused on other potential causes like viral infections. Now people think and are concerned that all of the research of Alzheimer's might have been focused too much on that one theory, which has set the research back and cost them valuable time. This might be true, and hopefully one day when we do learn about how to effectively combat the disease, we'll understand just how much of a waste it really was or wasn't, but I also think that when it comes to medical research, is any of it really waste? I mean, knowing what is not causing it is definitely a step in the direction of finding out what is causing it. In our number 4 spot today, we have bacteria resistance. There are an array of antibiotics and vaccines that have been created that have not only helped us survive as a human race, but have also improved our quality and length of life. This is all amazing and truly helpful, but the scientists who study things like this also made a scary discovery that while these treatments are doing great work, there are some microbes who are working just as hard, and they might be evolving faster than we can fight them. This is why the flu shot is created yearly, as the previous shot is ineffective against the next year's bug, or why hospitals are seeing some people have a simple cut turn into a potentially limb or even life-threatening situation because of antibiotic-resistant staph bacteria, or how there are illnesses jumping from animals to humans, or even how tuberculosis is seemingly making a comeback. These kinds of discoveries are extremely important because it helps us calculate next steps, but it's also incredibly frightening because while we might still be ahead for now, how long is that gonna last? There's a chance that the bacteria is going to catch up to us and we won't be able to get back ahead of it. And remember how we were talking about how low the average lifespan was not that long ago? Yeah, well, we can thank antibiotics in part for helping us expand that, and you can infer what would happen if the bacteria overcame our medical advancements. we'd all die. That's what I'm saying. In our number 3 spot today, we have ball lightning. Okay, I'd never heard of this before, and now I am simply dying to see it, but truthfully, I probably never will. For the last millennia, apparently there are some people who are telling stories about these mysterious balls of light that glow and crackle and basically hover there creepily during thunderstorms. Yeah, I want to see a glowing orb. I am so jealous. These glowing balls have been seen by people in their homes, on airplanes, apparently some have even seen them passing through windows. While my first thought is of course aliens, I mean a thunderstorm seems like a perfect time for them to visit, scientists think that these ball lightning are actually more terrestrial than I'm thinking. But despite that, they are the most mysterious weather phenomena on the planet. Ball lightning usually only appears for a few seconds, but here's the thing. It's impossible to predict when and where it will show up. You don't choose ball lightning chooses you. It's quite rare, but people and scientists alike have experienced it. It's been attempted to be created in labs, but no one can figure out the exact formula that creates it, so I'm gonna continue on with my original theory of aliens. In our number 2 spot today, we have, how will the universe end? Perhaps it's a morbid question, but it's a good one. I mean, all good things must come to an end, and that might include the universe itself, but maybe it doesn't? I mean, we don't know. There are theories such as the Big Crunch, which suggests that the expansion of the universe, which has been ongoing since the Big Bang, will eventually slow to a stop, and then the universe will give way to the force of gravity, essentially just pulling everything. Planets, galaxies, all of it into a single dense point until everything is just wiped out. There are other theories out there such as the Big Freeze, the Big Bounce, or the Big Rip, which sounds the most terrifying of them all, although I'm not particularly interested in any of these options so far. The good news is that this is all billions and billions of years away, so we won't be around to find out regardless. But when it does happen, it'll be a pretty spectacular event. Or maybe by that time the human lifespan will be so long that we will be around to check it out. Wouldn't that be a spectacular event? I don't think I'd want to live for billions of years though. In our number 1 spot today, we have slime mold. No, we are not talking about looking up slime tutorials on YouTube, we're talking about the strangely intelligent slime mold, more particularly asking, how is that stuff so smart? Basically, they are single-celled organisms, but they, and by they I mean many individual slime mold cells, can all fuse themselves together into one big mass that's capable of thinking? I put a question mark on that because I'm not sure if that's the right word, but I don't know what else you could call it. These masses can solve mazes, they can make risk versus reward decisions, and there's some evidence that suggests that slime mold just might be able to keep track of time. I have absolutely zero idea what tests could reveal that mold has some sort of internal clock, but it's said to exist. The reason this is so intriguing and captivating to scientists is because all of this is happening with no brain present. Not even a single brain cell. I'm glad to know I'm not the only one. However the slime mold is able to do this, it means that it has evolved in a way that is completely different from humans, which is a bewitching idea that leaves us both fascinated and kind of confused. How do they do this? What can this teach us about intelligence? And honestly, how does this even happen if there's no brain? What is responsible for the ability to make these kinds of decisions? Starting up this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Venus landscape. Many people would call Venus an absolute hellscape, and for fair reasons. It's the second planet from the sun, but somehow it manages to be the hottest planet in our solar system, which in part is due to the almost entirely carbon dioxide atmosphere. There are clouds of sulfuric acid that hover above the volcanic landscape and lava flows, and the pressure is immense, sitting at around 92 times the pressure you would feel on Earth at sea level. Here's where the mysterious part comes in, however. It is thought that Venus was once a planet that was actually very similar to Earth. A planet with oceans of liquid water, one that could potentially support life. So, what happened? While it leaves us with scientific mysteries, it also leaves us with existential questions as well. The Earth and Venus are like siblings. They were made at the same time, they're made of the same stuff, yet Venus is awful and apocalyptic and Earth is a paradise for us. How could this have happened? Theories range from Venus being cooked by the sun to Venus being cooked by volcanoes and hot magma. I don't have the answers to Venus's mysteries, but I can definitely say that I am glad it happened over there and not here on Earth. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Patam crater. Located in Siberia, there is a giant crater that has origins we can't quite figure out. Patam is giant at 520 feet wide and 139 feet tall, and it's basically made up of broken limestone. Some people who are local to the area refer to it as the Fire Eagle's Nest and tend to associate the mound with death because of the lack of plant growth on it, and apparently also the lack of animals that are willing to go near it, which is always a good reason to stay away from something. If the animals don't like it, they probably have some sort of reason that our senses aren't picking up on. The crater was first discovered in 1949 by a Russian geologist, but despite all of the years it's been, we still aren't quite sure how it came to be. While we aren't sure, we have plenty of possible theories that include an ultra-dense meteorite that had sunk underground after impact, or others suggest it might be a fragment of the Tunguska meteorite. Some believe it's the breakthrough of a pocket of natural gas, but at this point, despite several scientific expeditions to the crater, the origins of it are still mysterious as ever. Maybe one day we'll know for sure, but it's entirely possible that we may never know. In our number 8 spot today, we have tardigrades. What in the world are these things? We know that they're little 8-legged microorganisms, we know that they're most often found in mossy trees, and we know that they basically have superpowers considering how they can live without water, they can withstand temperatures as extreme as -200 degrees Celsius all the way to 150 degrees Celsius. They can even survive in outer space. This is exactly why people are speculating where they are even from, as some people think that maybe outer space is where they came from. There are of course others who believe that they are from this Earth, but even with the most elaborate gene sequencing, scientists aren't able to exactly figure out what they are or even what phylum they belong to. They are pretty much an anomaly here on Earth, and while they are super interesting, they're also super mysterious. What do you guys think? Some sort of extraterrestrial organism, or perhaps just an earthly phenomena? Are they worms? Are they insects? Are they crustaceans? Or are they aliens? Who knows? In our number 7 spot today, we have the octopus exodus. Okay, octopuses are already mysterious. They've got a ton of legs, they're elusive, they're way too smart, but why did they walk out of the sea? I'm not bringing forward some new evolution theory, I'm talking about when, in 2017, dozens of octopuses just emerged from the sea and started to crawl along the coast of a seaside town in Wales. They just went out for a nightly stroll, and no one knows why or where they were off to. There are multiple theories that have been put forward that include things like octopus dementia, which is a whole other story, displacement because of storms, or perhaps a population boom that left octopuses searching far and wide for food, and while these are all relatively reasonable explanations, they fail to explain why this mass octo exodus stopped abruptly just 3 days later. Yeah, it's really weird. I wish we could just pick the brain, well, one of the 9 they apparently have, again, a whole other story, of an octopus for a ton of reasons, but finding answers to this mystery just might top the list. In our number 6 spot today, we have bilingual. Okay, this is a true story that has to do with a person named Ben McMahon. So while in high school, Ben started to learn Mandarin, but really only got to a level where he could have very basic conversations. We're certainly not talking about him being fluent. So anyway, after high school, in 2015, Ben was unfortunately in a really bad car accident where he was T-boned from the side, and this resulted in him being rushed to the hospital and placed into an induced coma for a week. When he woke up, he began to get frustrated when he realized that no one could understand what he was saying. That was until a nurse who had the ability to speak Mandarin overheard him and was able to understand exactly what he was saying. When Ben awoke from this coma, he was no longer speaking English, he was fluently speaking Mandarin only. To make this even more curious, Ben had no concept that he was speaking another language. He says there was no English to Mandarin translation happening in his head. It was simply just the most natural thing coming out of his mouth. After some time passed, Ben was able to regain his memory and ability to speak English, and he is now able to differentiate between the two, but exactly how this happened is a true mystery to experts. According to Ben, one of the leading theories is that, quote, "For English speakers, most of our language memory is on the left side of the brain, but for some reason Mandarin speakers use both hemispheres of the brain more than, say, your average English speaker, and I received most of the impact on my left side, so that side needed to rest and repair itself. Potentially what then happened is the brain went, okay, the left side needs to go into more rest, let's shift the language activity over to the right side, and for that reason maybe Mandarin became more natural." Whatever really happened here remains a mystery, but it truly is fascinating and shows the unbelievable abilities our brains have that we aren't always even conscious of. In our number 5 spot today we have the North Pole. We've all heard plenty of stories about the North Pole on our planet. I mean, maybe we know it as the place where Santa and the elves live, or maybe we know it as just the northernmost point of the Earth, diametrically opposite to the South Pole, but either way, we talk about it. You know what we don't talk about enough though? The North Pole of Saturn. If you're thinking, well, what could be so special there, you came to the right place. At Saturn's North Pole, there is a weather system the size of 2 Earths, which is already startling, but here's the curious part. It's shaped as a hexagon. This is weird because the only other naturally occurring hexagonal shape scientists have found is in crystals. So, how exactly is this happening? Despite this weather system being observed and photographed by NASA's Cassini spacecraft for years, it still remains a total mystery to us. Couple this with how the storm somehow turned from a turquoise color to a yellow color in just a few years, and we truly have a baffling weather mystery. In our number 4 spot today we have Tabby's star. Alright, it's about time we start asking the real questions, and by that I mean, what is going on with Tabby's star? KIC 8462852, or Tabby star, is located just 1,500 light years away from us, but the mystery of it lies in how it keeps experiencing a dimming in its brightness of around 22%. Normally stars only see a dimming of about 1%, so this is obviously an extreme jump that has us intrigued. What exactly is going on here? Honestly, there are people out there who believe that this dimming is proof of some sort of structure passing in front of it in a sort of orbit. Like, I don't know, maybe the sort of thing an advanced civilization could build? I'm all up for the idea of aliens, but I know that's not everyone's jam, so maybe we can just chalk it up to some sort of space situation that we have yet to discover. Considering how terrifying of a place space is, that isn't exactly comforting. At this point, we aren't sure what is causing the dimming, but it's becoming abundantly clear that the possibilities right now are endless. In our number 3 spot today we have sleep. Why do we sleep? It's my favorite part of every day, and even if we didn't need it, I feel like I would still do it because it's the most peace I get in a day, but despite how much I love it, no one is exactly sure why we do it. Of course, people have been researching it for decades because we've done it since the beginning of our existence, but despite the many theories out there, we still aren't quite sure. We know a lot about what's going on while we sleep, we just don't know why we need it. There are many other animals that also sleep like us, but there are also tons of life forms that don't. These include jellyfish, bacteria, plants, sponges. So why do higher animals have to sleep in order to stay healthy, sane, and I don't know, alive? There must be some sort of evolutionary advantage, but we still have yet to explain exactly why, where it started, but honestly, I'm okay with this mystery. As long as we're doing it, I'm happy. In our number 2 spot today we have gravity. Prior to the 1600s, if you were to bring up the idea of gravity to someone, they might think you were a witch. Or perhaps the devil. I mean, a woman who could do basic addition back then was surely a sign of something dark, so talking about some invisible force that holds us to the earth? Forbidden. That was until Isaac Newton came along and said, hey, why does the apple fall down from the tree? Why not like sideways? And thus, gravity was born. That's not exactly how it happened, but you get the idea. Gravity is very obviously important to us, and not only because it keeps us here on the planet. I mean, the moon's gravity causes the tides of our ocean. Gravity keeps us in orbit in our cozy little solar system home with our nice warm sun. We know these things and we're pretty positive that it exists, but how much do we really understand it? We know that this force is generated somehow from matter, and that the more massive an object, the greater its ability to attract other objects. So we understand how it acts, but we don't know why it exists. Why are atoms mostly empty space, and why is the force that holds them together different from gravity? What even really is gravity? Is it a particle? With our current understanding of physics, we aren't really able to answer these questions. Maybe we just don't have the technology or the capacity yet, or maybe it's just meant to forever be a mystery to us. Either way, although it's a mystery, I'm glad it's around. In our number 1 spot today, we have matter versus antimatter. Okay, so based on what we currently understand and believe about particle physics, matter and antimatter are equal, but they're opposites. So they should basically just destroy each other and then leave nothing, and most of this should have happened in the very, very early beginning days of the universe, but I mean, it obviously didn't. Somehow there was enough matter left over to then make billions and billions of galaxies, stars, planets, us. But this contradicts that one would assume that the universe would treat matter and antimatter symmetrically, which would then mean that at the moment of the Big Bang, equal parts of matter and antimatter should have been created and then completely cancelled each other out, leaving nothing in its place. Somehow there was an excess amount of matter that went on to survive, and we don't know how or why. Yes, I am saying that we don't know why anything exists. Yes, this may make you have an existential crisis. Welcome to the club, my friends. Despite a ton of research being put into it, we still aren't very close to understanding the mystery of why there is more matter than antimatter.
First up in our number 10 spot, The Hands Resist Him painting. As far as paintings go, The Hands Resist Him is probably considered one of the most haunted pieces in the whole world. William Stoneham, the creator, claims the inspiration for the piece came from an old photograph, and somehow, over time, it landed in the hands of a California couple. As the story goes, the sellers who auctioned it on eBay in 2000 kept the painting in their daughter's room. But one morning, the girl claimed that the people in the painting were not letting her sleep at night. So for the girl's peace of mind, they set up a motion sensor camera to prove that no monsters were coming out of the painting. However, to their surprise, they captured some truly frightening activity. They awoke to find photos of the boy crawling from the painting, and others where the doll's face had changed to a very angry disposition while holding a weapon. Not only that, it's also rumored to have been responsible for the death of 3 different men who came into contact with the piece at one time or another. Today you can find it hidden in the back room of Smith's Perception Fine Art Gallery in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but be warned, those that witness the painting often complain of nausea or extreme physical pain while in its presence. Moving on to number 9, Wheelie. Some say it's a stuffed dog, while others say it looks more like a sheep, but either way, it's an old, creepy, haunted toy from the 19th century that can be found in the Prince Edward Island Museum in Canada. Nicknamed Wheelie due to the creaky wheels the stuffed animal sits on top of, this nearly 200-year-old toy was found lying inside the walls of the Yeo House while construction was underway. According to the staff, the disfigured sheep-dog toy was simply lying on the ground inside the walls, and so they decided to keep it and put it out on display for their visitors, which would all be well and fine except for the fact that it may have been hidden in a wall for a reason. Apparently Wheelie is known to wander around all by himself and is often found hiding in a different spot than he was left the night before. So again, maybe best to put him back where he was found. Moving on to number 8, Delphi Purple Sapphire. The Delphi Purple Sapphire was a beloved stone once held safely in the Temple of Indra. That was until English Colonel W. Ferris looted it from the temple during the Indian Rebellion in 1857 and brought it back with him to England. However, Ferris soon regretted this decision as he quickly began losing his fortune and his entire family started facing bad luck at every turn. At first, the family blamed the financial hit on a bad investment, but after one of their friends took their own life after holding the stone in their hands, they began to fear that some unseen force could be sabotaging them. Afterwards, the following owner, Edward Heron Allen, had such bad luck that he tried 3 times to get rid of the stone by throwing it in the nearby river, only for it to make its way back into his possession each time. Eventually, Edward decided to lock up the stone in a box in an attempt to seal its powers away, but London's Natural Museum of History got wind of this so-called cursed stone and Edward gave in, giving it to them provided they did not open the box until 3 years after his death and that his daughter may never be permitted to touch it. The museum followed the strict instructions and waited before setting it out on display, but they quickly discovered Edward was not exaggerating. The museum curator who handled the stone a total of 3 times says each time something awful has happened, and so it's remained hidden ever since. Moving on to number 7. Peter Curtin's head. Hidden in the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in Wisconsin is one of the most haunting objects you could come across. The severed head of a dead man. But who's the guy? Well, none other than the vampire of Dusseldorf, Peter Curtin. To give you a bit of context, Peter Curtin is widely considered one of the most cruel and deranged men of the 20th century. Between 1913 to 1929, he was a rampant killer and predator, responsible for the death of 10 people, and attempted another 31 killings among his 68 crimes total. While in court, he received the nickname Vampire of Dusseldorf for reasons I'm sure you can imagine, and after freely confessing to all his crimes with no remorse, he was sentenced to execution via the guillotine. But his atrocities did not end there. In fact, shortly before he was executed, he famously turned to his psychiatrist and asked, quote, "Tell me, after my head is chopped off, will I still be able to hear, at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures." Following his beheading, his head was then bisected and his brain was removed in order to be studied. The rest of his head, however, was mummified, transferred to the United States, and tucked away for everyone's safety. Moving on to number 6. Women from Lem statue. Nicknamed the Goddess of Death, this cursed limestone statue was first unearthed in 1878 in Lem, Cyprus. Estimated to date back to somewhere around 3500 BC, it's unknown who created the statue or what purpose it may have been for, but it is believed to have been owned by 4 different families, all of whom died within a few years of obtaining the artifact. The first was Lord Elfont, who 6 years after acquiring the statue died along with all 7 members of his family. Next was Ivor Minucci, whose entire family died within 4 years, followed by Lord Thompson Knoll, whose family perished within 4 years. For a while after that, the statue seemingly vanished until it wound up in the hands of Sir Alan Biverbrook and his family, who, as I'm sure you can predict, all died within a few years. After the last family died, there were 2 remaining family members who somehow managed to escape the deathly fate, and terrified of the powers the statue possessed, they donated it to the Royal Scottish Museum, where it now rests. But before it was safely stowed away, it took one last life, as the museum curator who handled the statue died within the year of touching it. Thank God no one else has touched it since. Moving on to number 5. Robert the Doll. In 1904, a boy named Robert Eugene received a doll as a present from his grandfather. Robert was so excited about the gift that he even named the doll after himself. Almost immediately, his parents felt like something wasn't right. They claimed they would hear Robert speaking to his doll at night and that a strange voice would answer back. As time went on, Robert got more and more attached, and his parents began noticing that his behavior was changing for the worse. When they would notice something strange, like furniture in a different room or objects scattered around the house, Robert would get extremely defensive and blame everything on the doll. However, things only got creepier as Robert got older. He kept the doll even as an adult and brought it to his new home with his wife. Neighbors that walked past said the doll was always looking out the window in the attic and would watch you as you walked by, often changing his expression as if he was taunting you. Years later, when Robert and his wife died, the new owner found the doll in the attic and said that every night they could hear eerie giggling coming from above. From there, it said the doll was donated to a museum in Florida, locked behind glass, and hidden from the public. Coming in at number 4. Hope Diamond. As the legend goes, back in 1666, a French merchant obtained this beautiful blue diamond after illegally plucking the gem from a Hindu idol and selling it to King Louis XIV, a sacrilegious crime for which he was later mauled to death by dogs for committing. But fast forward a few years to the French Revolution, and the cursed gem was allegedly stolen again, this time disappearing for years only to reappear in the 1800s. For years, experts questioned where this jewel had been hidden, but their curiosity was short-lived as soon the jewel wasted no time ruining lives of those it interacted with, and has routinely been blamed for several tragedies over the years. Some of the misfortunes include the loss of great fortune, people's deaths, and people taking their own lives, while some even say Marie Antoinette's death could have been linked to her possession of the cursed diamond. Nowadays, this cursed object is safely stowed away as part of the Smithsonian Institution, so let's just hope it's never found and stolen again. Otherwise, who knows what could be unleashed. Moving on to number 3, Busby chair. As the story goes, Thomas Busby was strangely obsessed and protective of this beloved chair, and killed his father-in-law after he found him sitting in it without permission. Before his execution was finalized, Thomas was given one final request, and he chose to have one last drink in his chair. And according to legend, his last words were, "May death come to anyone who dares sit in my chair." Now, of course, no one took this entirely seriously at first. He was a man facing death and was bound to spew a concerning thing or two. Plus, he was known to be a liar and a killer, so no one really took his words to heart. That was until people actually started dying. After Busby's death, multiple reports arose of one tragedy after another, and each of them came from someone who had sat in the killer's beloved chair. One man was found hanging outside the Busby Stoop Inn after sitting in the chair, and many soldiers who sat in the chair during World War II died days later. But nowadays, for the safety of everyone, the chair lives in England Thirsk Museum, hanging from the ceiling so that no one else can ever accidentally be cursed by the evil seat. Coming in at number 2, Nabrok. In 17th century Iceland, there was a well-known witchcraft ritual where people would create pants out of the skin of the deceased in hopes of a better life for them and their families moving forward. Called Nabrok, meaning corpse breeches, or more commonly referred to as necro pants nowadays, the pants were made as a talisman to magically summon more money for whoever made them. However, there was a catch. The man in question had to have consented before death, and the deed could only be done after the burial had taken place. Once loved ones said their goodbyes, you were free to dig up the corpse and peel off the skin, being careful to keep it all in one piece. It was believed that no holes or tears could occur, otherwise the power of the necropants would be lost. But disgustingly, it didn't stop there. Once you had fashioned the pants and put them on your person, the ritual demanded you head out into the village and steal one coin from a destitute widow. From there, the coin was to be placed in the groin of the pants, along with a traditional Icelandic sigil for the ritual to be complete. There is only one known pair of such pants remaining today, and it's hidden in the Museum of Icelandic Sorcery and Witchcraft. And if you ask me, they are just about the most terrifying thing I can think of. And last up in our number 1 spot, the Devil's Rocking Chair. In the early 1950s, the Glatzel family received this rocking chair, but by the summer of 1980, this piece of furniture would play a role in an exorcism so famous they made a movie about it. Long story short, young David Glatzel began seeing visions of what he described was a man with big black eyes, a thin face with animal features, jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, and hooves. Soon after, David was believed to be possessed by the demon living inside the cursed chair, and that is when Ed and Lorraine Warren became involved. Then in comes Arn Johnson, the fiance of David's older sister Debbie, who allegedly during the final exorcism told the demon to leave the boy alone and come into him. As legend has it, the demon moved into Arn, who then shortly after was convicted for killing his landlord, stating in his confession that the devil had made him do it. From there, the cursed chair stayed in Ed and Lorraine's museum for many years until Zach Baggin bought it from them. However, in 2019, Zach closed down the exhibit and hid the chair away after too many terrifying supernatural encounters.